It's minimum wage. It's the entry to the workforce. It isn't something that somebody should be doing for a 40-year career at minimum wage.
And I just completely disagree with that. If somebody is working full-time hours, we'll set that at 40 hours a week. If somebody is working full-time hours, they should be making enough money that they can have a decent lifestyle.
Watch and or listen while we tackle tough and sometimes taboo topics filmed live over drinks. This platform allows us to articulate our thoughts and challenge our beliefs. This is SipTalk. Grab a drink and enjoy. All right, we are live. This is SipTalk, episode 282. My name is Justin DiGiulio, joined by James, the Bosnaner, Boswell, philosopher, philanthropist, philatelist, phlebotomist, flamingo enthusiast, a man full of phlegm. How's it hanging down there in not so sunny South Carolina, James?
Dude, daylight savings time sucks. Actually, it's standard time that sucks, but yeah, like, I don't know, for some reason, like, it getting darker earlier is just making all the days feel longer. And
this is the first year that, I've always been kind of against the change up and getting rid of it, but this is the first year where I was like, I think I could go without it. Like, I was pretty happy. Things were getting darker earlier. The deeper into October we got, I was cool with that. And then all of a sudden it was like nighttime midway through the afternoon.
yeah, it sucks.
And that's not, that's not nice. That's kind of that's miserable.
In other news, I've been trying to figure out what I want to do for Thanksgiving, and I had been considering like flying somewhere. And I am glad that I have held off on that decision because with all the flights that are getting canceled, it's like, dude, I would not want to be flying right now. And since we don't really know when the government shutdown is going to end, and it could run all the way through the end of this month and into next month, like, flying over Thanksgiving will be a nightmare.
Yeah, I got some flights planned for Thanksgiving weekend. And
I know you do.
And I'm actually considering like booking backup train tickets like that.
The problem with the train is that it's actually pretty comfortable, but like to get from where you're going to where you're going, it's going to be a very long trip.
Yeah, it's going to be a long trip. But nice thing about trains is they have bar carts, so that wouldn't be that bad. And you can get up and walk way more comfortably than you can on an airplane.
Oh, yeah, no, like, you got more space, it's more comfortable, it's smooth. You've got,
but it's four times the travel time.
Oh, yeah.
Just one note. Today we are talking about Zohran Mamdani, the mayor-elect for New York City. Just so you know, that's the topic. We'll get into who he is, why he is a topic for today's podcast. But in the meantime, I wanted to ask you about, you're talking about Thanksgiving. I wanted to ask you about Halloween. You had a lot of trick-or-treaters?
We didn't participate this year. Neither me nor my roommate were really feeling it, so we just turned off the outside light and we're just like, we're pass.
Did you see trick-or-treaters in your neighborhood?
We didn't really look.
Trick-or-treating, I noticed, has changed. I'm on this Nextdoor app, and houses have to like opt in to have trick-or-treaters. And in my area, it's a very residential area where I am, there's like no trick-or-treaters.
The way we've done it in the past is we've set up like some chairs and a small table in the driveway so that people don't have to walk all the way up to the house.
Yeah.
And
then you sat at the chairs, yeah.
Yeah.
So we actually passed there. We go into this city called Elizabeth. It's super residential, pretty dense. The streets are literally like a concert is going on. It's almost like shoulder show. It's wild, but there's so much candy. Kids have a blast. One of the family, and every house like over decorates and has music and tons of decoration. Some are actually like pretty creepy, but one family was doing like a little fire pit on their driveway, and that was certainly interesting because it was super windy on Halloween up here. Yeah, so there was literally like flames and sparks flying and people just screaming, and it came and went with the gust of wind. So that was pretty funny.
All right, so what do you say? Get into it?
Yeah. I mean, listen, we got a lot to cover in this episode. Don't forget to visit SipTalkPodcast.com, buy us a drink, answer the bar trivia question. We got an answer about halfway through this episode to last week's bar trivia question about the trains crossing the bridge. And then I got a pretty good bar trivia for the end. So stay tuned for that. We want to thank Raj Galeb for being in the trenches here with us, feeding us your comments from all the platforms. And if you want to join and participate in the conversation, go to my Instagram page at Justin DiGiulio. Make sure you spell that correctly. And there's a link to join us, and you can levy your opinion on Zohran Mamdani. So why is Zohran Mamdani important, James? You're the South Carolinian. The
reason why
guy. So why
I, as a non-resident of New York City, care about this is I think he signals a change in the way that Democrats could approach elections. And like the Democrats have been losing pretty badly for a while now. And this, like, although there weren't that many elections this last Tuesday, like the elections that did happen were almost all swept by like Democrats, and Mamdani's was probably the highest profile victory. And I think it's important to look at what he did and why. And I like once we go through his policies and stuff, I want to talk about like, hey, what can the Democrats and the left learn from his approach and his campaign to make their message more appealing to your average voter?
Okay, so you're giving tips to the Democrats here, but let's talk real quick about who this guy is and why he's so polarizing and why you're getting wind of him in South Carolina. And
Well,
obviously, it's New York
I mean,
City. It's the
nobody
big
in South
city.
Carolina is talking about it. The reason why I'm following is because I pay attention to politics because it's something that's really interesting to me. But like the only person I've talked to in South Carolina about it is a friend of mine that I play pool with who moved to South Carolina from the New York City area. So he still has ties to New York City, even
Um,
though he doesn't live there anymore.
I'll tell you, I hate to backtrack and shoot some more shit, but this week I'm not drinking, so I'm drinking tea. On top of not drinking alcohol, I'm not consuming caffeine. So this is a decaf. This is a decaf tea. It's just pure peppermint. I'm also not no caffeine, no alcohol, no meat, no processed foods. Basically, just pure misery. So this unsweetened tea is going to be kind of the high point of my day today, consumption wise. So no alcohol. I feel like I could really use some alcohol to get into this conversation and this topic. But let's talk a little bit about the thing about Mamdani is that he got no right wing votes at all, and he's pretty far left on the Democratic side of things. He's a pretty liberal guy, self-proclaimed socialist. Um, so that's a little bit of background on this. Right now, obviously, New York City is a pretty liberal city, but he also had some competition. He went up against former Governor Andrew Cuomo and Curtis Sliwa. Am I pronouncing that right?
Sliwa.
Sliwa, who is basically his. So, by the way, Cuomo is a former Democrat. He was Democratic governor of New York. He ran independent because he wanted to
Part of
run.
the Cuomo family that's been part of New York politics for decades.
Yeah, but he wanted to. He thought he had a good shot at this, which he actually kind of did. But Sliwa, Curtis, whatever his name is, he's like a super anti-crime, red beret, like pretend they're the police type community action. I don't know what you want to
Yeah.
call it,
So
group. And crime has been a big issue in New York City lately.
all right, well, we're going to get to that, but you wanted to do a quick background, so let's just do like the 90-second breakdown on Mamdani's personal history
Well,
because some of it's informative to where he is today.
well, I mean, look, we can dig into it when it's more relevant at certain points, but a brief about him is he's 33 years old. He was not born in the U.S. Where let me look at my notes here. He was born.
He was born in Uganda and moved to New York City at age 7.
Yeah, and let's see. He lives somewhere in Southeast Asia, right?
I don't know. But
So,
like,
but his
like most of his life in New York City.
so he he does not come from a poor background. He comes from a pretty wealthy family. He attended the Bronx Science High School in New York City and graduated. But what is it, Bedoin College,
Yeah, I don't know where that
with
is.
a degree in Africana Studies? I don't know where that is either.
I'm looking it up right now.
He's labeled himself as privileged but politicized, and is aware of inequality despite being part of an elite world.
Brunswick, Maine.
Oh, okay, went to school in Maine. He lives in a $2,300 rent stabilized apartment in Astoria, Queens, which, for people who aren't aware, I'm a real estate broker. $2,300 apartments are almost impossible to find. Rent stabilized apartments also very difficult to find. And the location that he's in certainly carries a decent price tag. I won't say this is a super cheap apartment. I heard it was $1,800 to $2,000. Our notes here have $2,300. I don't have the citations, but that's still a pretty low rent. Although he's moving out pretty soon.
Yeah, but he's also not going to be paying rent pretty soon.
He's going to be living in a Gracie mansion. He is recently married. He met his wife on Hinge, the app. So that's certainly
very millennial of him.
And he's 33 years old, so he's not young.
He's either he's either an older Gen Z or a very young millennial. He kind of splits the difference there.
Yeah, but I mean, given his politics, I'm guessing he definitely trends kind of with the younger beliefs. Before he got into politics, he worked as a foreclosure prevention counselor, which I'm guessing is probably where he got a little more politicized. Certainly, trying to help low income and working class people to save their homes from foreclosure. And then he became politically active to the Democratic Socialists of America, and that was around 2017.
And like the big name with Democratic Socialists would be Bernie Sanders.
Exactly. So, and he first got elected to the New York State Assembly in 2020, and he represented the neighborhood where he lives now, Astoria. So, and he's kind of, his background is tenant protection and rights on the tenant's end.
And before we get into the issues, because like I'm going to say like why did he win, and I'm going to say like two main things. One is like the issues, which we'll get into, but the other is like before he ran for mayor, he spent like a year just walking around New York City, talking to people, asking them about the issues that they cared about.
Of course, he was an assemblyman for
Sure. So, like, I mean, it's part of his job to do that.
Yeah,
But, like, he spent, instead of, like, outsourcing this to a focus group and getting polling data or whatever, he just went and talked to regular people and said, yo, what are the things that you think could be improved in New York City? And he made a lot of those issues part of his campaign. And it seems obvious that, like, hey, if you want to run for, like, a political office, you should know what the people that are going to vote for you care about and then run on those things. But I don't know, for some reason, it feels like a lot of politicians don't do that.
Well, here's the thing: is to become a serious politician, you have to live this serious politician life, and you kind of end up not having this exposure after a while.
Well, and I would say one of the other things, because I watched a
Like
bunch of videos that, like, now granted, most of them were released by his campaign, so they're going to make him look better than like just like neutral coverage. But when I watched a lot of videos of just him interacting with people, he came off to me as like a person, a regular guy. Like there wasn't this kind of stodgy, stilted approach that you see from a lot of politicians. He was. It seems like he was just genuinely interacting with people, and like and to some degree that's a skill of being charismatic and likable, but also it's something that just like I think more politicians could learn from, of just like, yo, just talk to people like they're
Well,
people.
look, yeah, I agree with that, and he does seem more like a regular person. Is it a regular person, somebody you want running the city? I don't know about that. And I had this thought when I was driving home, watching some videos and listening to this guy. Uh, if I was to share a meal with this guy, I don't think I would enjoy the company. I don't think we would have much to connect on. I didn't really like his personality. But again, my take on somebody's personality, having shared interests, it has no effect on somebody's ability to run a city. I just
Yeah.
thought, man, could I have a beer with this guy? And then I was like, I wonder if he even drinks.
No, he
And then
doesn't.
I was like,
Muslim.
well, I thought he was Hindu.
No, he's Muslim.
Okay, well, um, so then I was like, if he's not going to drink, how about a meal? And then I was like, could I really sit down for an entire meal with this guy? But and I thought to myself, yeah, I don't think so.
You know
But
what I would also say, and this is referencing your former mayor. It's like the whole concept of being a person is I don't really feel like your former mayor was all that much of a person. He was a very strange dude. And like
Eric
you just
Adams,
watch
you're
like
talking
his
about.
speeches and the way he comes across, you're like, what planet is this guy from?
Eric Adams, he is a strange, almost chameleon type weird guy. Chameleon, I say that very lightly, but I've listened to enough of his talks where that they put them side by side to the other ones, and he's literally like reciting the exact same speech and like just clipping in whatever country he's talking about or whatever
Oh
race
yeah,
he's
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about or whatever. It's the same fucking speech over and
Right.
over again. So that's what I mean, chameleon. Like he's just
No, but just the way he speaks and the way he interacts with people, I was just like, this is just very off-putting. And so, like, you said, hey, do you want someone that's
he's
do you
not a
think
Republican, by the way.
no,
He's
no, no, no.
he's
Like
not.
Eric Adams
He's
ran and won as a Democrat.
yeah.
But like the whole idea of being likable, while you could say, hey, that's not something that you really need in a mayor who's going to be leading a city, but politics is very often the art of persuasion and getting people on your side. And I'll tell you, it's a lot easier to do if people like you.
Yeah, but I also feel like a lot of people may not have even liked him. They just kind of liked the premise that he ran on, which was
Well, let's get to that then.
Okay, well let's talk about let's talk about first off how he got elected, what the election outcome was, because it was 49% him, and then it was roughly 42% Cuomo and 7% Curtis Silva. And oddly, write-ins were a higher amount than Eric Adams. So there's a higher percentage for write-ins than there was for the current mayor.
Yeah,
so
I would say the city made two very good decisions there. One is like I think that they made the right decision in picking Mamdani, and two, that write-ins outnumbered Eric Adams is really telling.
So, but it looks like, had Slua not run, it would have been much closer. And then also there was actually, and you can blame Elon Musk for bringing this kind of to the attention of a lot of people via the X Twitter platform. But Mamdani was the top left person on the ballot, and he appeared twice because he was running under two different parties, as was Curtis Slua. I can't say it right.
Sliwa, it's not hard.
I don't know why I'm getting it wrong. Obviously doesn't take any space in my head because I'm going to forget about him until the next election. Or he pops up and hopefully doesn't ruin it for somebody else. And then Cuomo, I asked people, I sent them a picture of the ballot and said, Mamdani's on here twice. Can you find Cuomo? And a lot of people were like, oh, he's not on there. I was like, no, look harder. But the fact that people were like, he's not on there, I was like, no, keep looking. But I understand why and how. And listen, I understand why and how it happened. It's unfortunate for Cuomo that it happened the way that it happened.
Well, that's what happens when you lose the primary. It's not unfortunate. It's what happens when you lose.
Well, that's misfortune. Yes, losing is misfortune. So
right, but it's misfortune that you were under the control of.
To a degree, yeah. I mean,
by choosing to run.
Sliwa was under control as well, but to a greater.
Right, if I play against. If I play against a stronger opponent in pool and I lose, that's an unfortunate result for me. But it's not like I can be like, well, just look how unlucky I am. I got beat by somebody who was better than me. It's like, no, they just won.
All right. So let's talk about who voted for him and who didn't vote for him. So
let's make this quick.
His highest voter turnout, you want to make it quick because it doesn't support your argument. His highest voter turnout was people who have lived in New York City for less than 5 years.
No, I don't care about the demographics. I want to talk about the issues.
And then also by income, the majority of his votes came from people who earn below $50,000.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
Well, it doesn't surprise me at all either. But I don't think that speaks to New York City. I understand I understand that there's a lot of people who don't earn that much money, but it is also the financial capital of the world. So when we get to these issues, you can make New York City the financial capital of the world or the welfare state of the world. Okay, well, it's becoming the welfare
dichotomy.
It's becoming the welfare state of the world.
No, that's a false dichotomy. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Well, what I'm saying is it's heading towards the welfare state because businesses and financial companies and wealthy people don't want to be there. Okay, to a greater extent are leaving.
Seeing no evidence of that actually happening.
People are moving out of New York City.
People were moving out of New York City for the past 5 years, for the past 10 years.
People are always moving out of New York City, but wealthier people are moving out of New York City. Fewer businesses. If you look at the retail landscape of the city, 2 out of every 3 retail spaces are empty. So you have fewer businesses.
And how different is that today from like
I would say again, I'm not saying the
city got hit by COVID.
I'm not saying it's all political, but what I'm saying is businesses are leaving the city. So whether it started in 2020 or it started in 2018 or it started in 2023, the trend is businesses are leaving the city and wealthy people are not wanting to invest. There's a whole bunch of reports that just came out saying if you bought an X, Y, and Z neighborhood, you probably lost money on your investment over the last 10 years. So people buying $1 million plus condos are losing money.
Right. And so the whole 10-year, the 10-year time frame on that matters a lot because you saw a massive hit to New York City real estate during COVID when you had a whole bunch of people that used to live in the city move to somewhere else because they could work fully remote and keep their New York City salary, but not have to pay New York City prices for everything. So like the question of like what effect are politics having on New York City's economy? Well, you have to take COVID into account here.
You're now on a tangent. What I said is wealthy people and businesses are leaving the city. Okay. So it is no longer the financial capital of the world. It's barely the financial capital of America right now and of the United States. And we're seeing more low income people. We're seeing more immigrants coming to the city. we're seeing the city is kind of falling, okay,
So
in its stature
immigrants coming
amongst
to the
other
city
cities.
has always been its identity, so that's not a bad thing.
No, but it has always been its identity because that's what it was founded on. Okay, but we've had a sudden influx of immigrants.
That's
Okay,
fine.
at greater rates. So it may be its identity because that's what it was founded on. Okay, but the city can't support itself right now.
Well, we'll see
So
about that.
so all right. So
And a lot of what I have
let's
all
move
right,
on here. Let's move on here so we can get to some of his actual issues. All right. Okay. Let's
let's
just
just do the issues.
okay. Well, should we talk about more of who voted for him? His voters were first-time voters, a lot of renters, students, low-income families, immigrants, and gig workers.
Right.
A
So
lot of his
a
support.
person who campaigned on economic populism, on helping the lowest earning people in the city, and who was young and appealed to young voters, surprisingly got votes from the exact kinds of people that he was campaigning to. This is
Yep.
not surprising.
I'm not surprised by it either. You know, people who are students in the city who have come from outside the city. No wonder the majority of his voters were people who have lived here for 5 years or fewer.
Yeah, and
Uh,
so if you've got a city like again, like the voters make up if you look at the makeup of the city in terms of demographics, most of the people are going to fall into the lower incomes,
yes,
and
and
like
those
they're
numbers
the
are
ones who
growing, and
vote
those numbers are growing.
right. So
Well, you just told me
they're
that wasn't right. You told me that
no, no,
wasn't right.
no. What I didn't say that his voters weren't lower income.
No,
Like
I
that's
said that that number
indisputable
is
data.
growing, and we're
Oh
becoming more of a welfare state, a welfare
no,
city.
I I don't well I don't think that
I
that's an
said, I
accurate
said, I
characterization.
said that we're trending more towards being a welfare state than we are being a financial capital.
Well, and that's where I'm saying it's a false dichotomy because you can have a financial capital of the world that also has like welfare and socialist policies to support the less
You, I,
wealthy
I'm
residents.
not disagreeing with you under the premise that you can have low income residents and a financial hub. But what I'm saying is the financial companies, the businesses, and the wealthy people are moving out, and
And that
those are the people who
you're
did
not really
not,
I'm not seeing that.
and those are the people who did not vote for him.
Right,
I mean,
but
I don't think that
the way
I mean,
you're
you ask
setting this
anybody in
up
New
is
York City,
problematic.
you ask anybody in New York City where the wealthy people are moving. Same thing in California. They're moving to Texas. They're moving to Florida. They're moving out of places like New York and California.
Yeah, and then
Okay.
a lot of them are getting to places like Texas and realizing why it's not necessarily as good as they thought it was going to
Well,
be.
and they're also making those places a little more liberal because
Right.
they're coming from
So,
California and New York. But that's neither here nor there. That's a separate
all right,
conversation.
let's
So the
get into
people,
the issues.
one other thing I wanted to mention is the Jewish community vastly voted, especially the Orthodox Jewish in New York City, vastly voted against him because of some of his comments on Israel.
Well, and
Um,
there's also a huge Islamophobic campaign against him, so we can't ignore the racism aspect to it as
yeah,
well.
there's a major racial aspect of this. So let's talk about his campaign promises because I think these are maybe where you and I will actually have a little less debate on.
Yeah, I mean, there's all right. So number one, free city bus service.
Okay, well, it's been being sold as free public transportation, but that's not what it is. So all the headlines read free public transportation. What it really is free buses.
Right, because if you were to do free public transportation, that includes the metro, and that would be very expensive every year.
Yeah. So free bus fare, which by the way, buses are vastly underutilized by a lot of New York City residents. When I tell real estate agents that uh, they should ride the bus to get from this point to that point, or they look at me like I have two heads. Riding the bus, people are like literally afraid to get on the bus. I'm like, one, the buses are fucking way cleaner than the subways. There's way less crime because buses move, whereas subway stations don't move, and that's where people like chill out is in the subway. The crazy homeless people doing drugs under the stairs or just on the stairs, really pissing on the stairs in the subway station. The buses move. Homeless people don't hang out in the buses. Buses are actually way safer.
Yeah, I think part of the reason, and this is someone who has never lived in New York City but been there plenty and traveled through the city. I mean, as a pseudo tourist, I guess, is that like the bus system is less easy to understand and navigate for someone casually. Whereas like the metro is very easy, you know exactly where you're going to get to. Like the maps are pretty readable and everything. Whereas with like a bus, like it's not as easy to know what bus you need to get on to get to some place or another.
And then some of the buses you have to have special like tickets or something. It's very
Right.
I
Like
get confused on the buses.
right. So I even had that issue trying to get from like LaGuardia to like Midtown Manhattan is like I had to take a bus from LaGuardia and like I didn't have a Metro card and like I didn't have exact change to pay the bus fare.
Yeah,
And
it is tough.
so like the making the buses free but keeping like the subway as, ticketed that makes a lot of sense.
Look, I'm not against free buses because I think they're underutilized. What I am against is plans to make. So I got a ticket a couple months ago for driving across 14th Street. The sign said local traffic only. I was going somewhere that was on 14th Street, but I got a $55 ticket, and the last ticket I tried to argue ended up going to
Why did you get a
almost
ticket? What was
double.
the ticket for?
It's buses only and
But that's
local.
different from local traffic.
Well, it's buses only. It's painted on the streets, but then a sign says local traffic. So I turned onto the street with the sign said local traffic. I thought I was good. I
would fight that ticket.
But the last ticket that I fought, I lost with, and they tacked on to it because I tried to appeal it, and I don't know, it was a pain in the ass. So
anyways,
this one I just did $55. I'll just pay it.
But
Turning major arteries like 34th Street, 23rd Street, 14th Street into bus only actually really makes traffic very, very difficult.
Well, is that part of the plan?
That's what I was seeing on the news today.
Okay, because I hadn't heard about that. Again, I don't know all the details of these plans. I'm kind of broad stroking here, but the idea of saying hey, let's make the buses free so that lower income people can have a little bit more money in their pocket instead of having to pay a bunch of bus fares to get to work, and it takes more cars off the road because if it's free, maybe people will take the bus instead of drive, and it makes it easier for people that are visiting the city to get around.
We agree on it. We agree. Free buses, not free full. I mean, by the way, a lot of people are just skipping the turnstiles on the subways anyway, so the people that want it free are taking it.
Yeah, but as someone who has ridden many times on the subway in New York, I don't mind paying the fare.
The other thing that I've heard a lot of is that they say that most people actually don't pay for the buses anyways, and the bus drivers are fearful to try to enforce it or confront people.
Hey, that's going to make the bus driver's job safer then.
And that's another big reason behind this. So, I mean, imagine you're a bus driver and you just get, a bunch of assholes get on the bus and don't pay. Are you going to fuck everybody else's day and stop the bus?
So, hey, this makes the bus driver's jobs easier and more pleasant. Good.
Yeah, I'm for that. They say it's going to cost a lot of money, but they're raising taxes on it. We're not going to get into how they're paying for it right now.
Well, we have to at some point, but let's go on to the next one because this one's interesting, and this is the one where
this is the real estate one.
And this is he says he wants to freeze rent on rent stabilized apartments. Now, you know a lot more about this space than I do. I can look at this from the micro and macro perspective of just what rent stabilization does and what the cost of real estate ownership is. And this also ties in with the $30 an hour minimum wage because this is an interesting intervention of government into free markets.
So freezing rent stabilized apartments, they're already fucking rent stabilized. Come the fuck on. They tick up a couple percentage points at most every year. These are very low priced apartments, and he himself lives in a rent stabilized apartment. Okay. Now, landlords need these increases. The city typically restricts landlords from charging more money. And then, the landlord's bills go up, the utility bills, the cost of labor for the landlords to man the supers or doormen or building staff. They just push the broker fees onto the landlords, which is basically takes at least a 12th of their revenue away every time they have to re-rent the apartment, providing that they're doing it annually. The city just keeps leaning on landlords to pay for things and capping what they can charge. I understand rent is very high in the city, but I don't think a freeze on rent stabilized apartments is a good idea at all. I think you could be more involved with affordable housing. But rent stabilized apartments are already fucking stabilized. There's a whole rent stabilization board.
Yeah, so this is where this is one of his ideas where I'm not so sure it's a good one. And I'll be interested to see how it plays out in terms of him trying to do it, because there's a really big difference between the $30 an hour minimum wage and the rent stabilization from an economic perspective. Because on one side, you're increasing the costs to a business. You're making a business have to pay more for its workers, right?
Well, let's just skip ahead because you're bringing up the $30 minimum wage.
Well, yeah,
let's talk about both
back to that. But it's if you're freezing the ability of a business, in this case landlords, to generate revenue, the problem is in real estate, your costs are pretty difficult to control because a lot of times repairs aren't something that you can really get ahead of. It's like something breaks and you have to fix it, or the building needs repairs and you have to fix it, and like that just happens. And how bad the repair is mostly just a roll of the dice of like how bad was the storm damage, how old
Well,
was the
that's
thing,
look
right?
on that note. That's the 2019 law. The HSTPA capped the amount that landlords can increase the rent uh, up to roughly like just under $100 per month, irregardless of the amount of money that they put in renovation. So if a landlord does 80 grand worth of renovations because somebody lived there for 20 years and it needs new electric, it needs new floors, walls, plumbing, etc., especially the cost of labor there. Say they put in 80 grand, but they can only raise the rent $100 a month. That's $1,200 a year. It's going to take them 65 years to recap the $80,000.
Yeah, so
It doesn't work for landlords right
no,
now. So
it's
capping rent increases.
complicated because yeah, like if you cap the amount of revenue that something can make, but the costs are still uncapped, then you start to have investments that are unprofitable. But in another way, what that does is if you ultimately come back to just like time value of money, where like, hey, maybe the asset prices of like purchasing a unit will come down because you're like, and if the unit prices come down, then the rents come down.
Purchasing a unit, but we're talking about big buildings and big landlords and
But
medium-sized
what I'm saying
landlords.
is that like purchasing a unit is like proxy for purchasing X number of units. Is
Yeah,
like
but here,
if your revenue is capped, then that drives the valuation of the underlying asset.
yeah, exactly. And guess what? It goes down, and the landlords can't. So there's a lot of buildings that just have a ton of unrenovated apartments that they're just sitting because they can't afford to put the money into it and not be able to recoup that investment. And we're seeing landlords that are unable to pay their mortgage, and then we're seeing buildings being foreclosed on, but the banks won't take the buildings back because the banks don't want to pay the monthly losses on the building, the carrying costs on the
Right.
building.
So
And we
eventually,
actually have a few of these listings right now, and we can't find any buyers because who knows, especially with this new mayor coming in, when things are going to let up.
okay, but this is a case where you actually will like the market can find an equilibrium here because
Well,
if
the market can find an equilibrium with only so much government overreach.
no, even with the current government quote unquote overreach, like all of that plays into a prospective cash flow that the building can generate. And if that cash flow is lower than the current value of the building, then that means that the building is overvalued. And eventually that building will sell for a value that clears some net cash flow
But
on an annual
when
basis.
you've got 15% or 20% of the apartments vacant because somebody can't afford to put the money into it because they're not going to get any return on the investment.
Right, I
Right?
understand that. What
Yeah,
I'm saying is that the asset prices will decrease to the point where it then becomes profitable to renovate those apartments and rent them out. It just
I
means
don't,
that
but
the
it,
asset
no,
price needs to
it
decrease.
never, even if the asking price is zero, nobody's going to invest 80 grand into a building to make back negative money when they can only charge $1,200 extra per year.
But if you've got a building for free and you have to sink X number of dollars into it, you can calculate how much money like it's going to generate in cash flow at a
Exactly. Okay.
percentage. And
So
none of these buildings are going to be worth zero.
exactly. All right. Let's take a
But
pause on this
the
because we got.
market's going to recalculate the price. Like,
Let's pause on this. Okay, we'll get back into the
all right,
minimum
next
rate
item.
next. But the next item is actually bar trivia. And the bar trivia question from last episode. And also, guys, don't forget, visit siptalkpodcast.com. Answer the weekly bar trivia questions for a chance to win some cool bar merch, some Sip Talk merch. And don't forget to buy us a drink while you're there. So, bar trivia. Two train tracks run parallel to each other, except for a short distance where they meet and become one track over a narrow bridge. One morning, a train speeds onto the bridge. Another train coming from the opposite direction also speeds onto the bridge. Neither train can stop on the short bridge, yet there is no collision. How is this possible? James, how's it possible that one morning two trains can cross a bridge coming in opposite directions over one track and not run into each other?
Because they left at different enough times that they never would have intersected.
Correct. Yes, it happened over the course of one morning, but
If
at
they're an
different
hour
times.
apart, there's probably not an issue unless it's a
at,
really, really long bridge
at different times. I'll admit
or
that was,
really slow trains.
that was a goofy question.
All right, real quick. 5 mil says De Blasio didn't destroy New York. Neither will Mamdani. Which
he's got a good point.
Yeah,
He's got a good point. I remember the De Blasio headline: De Blasio bringing back businesses with dance, and then a bunch of people dancing in the streets, and it was
Oh
the
yeah,
dumbest thing I've ever seen. I
yeah.
mean,
Like
De Blasio was bad, by the way.
no, and I think Adams was bad and possibly worse, just in different ways.
No, but Adams was not very good, but I think he didn't have the skills, maybe the intellect to like figure things out. But I think his heart was in the right place.
What he was brazenly corrupt.
Sure, but his heart was in the right place. He wanted
Which
to
is
better
what,
the
making
city.
money for himself?
Sure, I mean
If
that's
that's if that's
everybody. But I think he genuinely cared about the city. Whereas De Blasio, I don't think that guy lived in reality. He lived in
I think Eric Adams
Mondani land.
genuinely cared about the city only insofar as to either feed his bank account or his ego.
Um, I don't know. I disagree. I think Eric Adams actually did genuinely care about the city. He was corrupt, and I think he's a bit of an idiot.
Rosh is saying, please don't condone bribery. For the record, I am condemning it, and I'm waiting for Justin to do the same.
No, I just said yeah. Like but I think he genuinely did care about the city, given he had different financial interests, his own in mind. I don't think that's all right, but De Blasio, I just think he lived in La La Land, and this Mondani guy, I think he does care about the city, but I think his means to get there are not going to be good for the city overall.
Well, and I'm gonna have I'll close with my thoughts on what you just said. Would
Right. Well,
in
you're
20
not
I
closing
know.
now.
I said
Yeah,
in 20
exactly. Yeah.
minutes. I want to close on
All right, so
what
let's
you're saying.
talk about this minimum wage. He wants to raise it to $30 an hour, but not immediately. By the year 2030,
So
which
gradually, by the end of his term, basically.
which I think is aggressive. But I don't think. I mean, it's double what it is now. So I think doubling the minimum wage in a 5-year span is a little irresponsible, because it doubles, somebody's. Yeah, I think it's a little too aggressive. That's
Well,
all.
I mean,
I'm all for raising it, especially in a city that purports to be the financial capital of the world. But there's a lot of small businesses out there that are just not. Most of the small business owners that I know make very little money, like 30 to 80 grand a year. Right?
so
They don't. The business might make $1 million, but after expenses and after wages,
yeah.
that 30 to 80 grand a year is what they're taking home to support their families. When you double the cost to have employees, that money goes away. That 30 to 80 grand just disappears, and then there's no reason to have a business,
Well,
because that's their
and
take home.
and so this is one of those policies where I'm really interested to see how it plays out, because there is a real cost to smaller businesses where like cost of labor is a pretty big line item on their expenses, and like the higher minimum wage could drive some small businesses out. On the other hand, anybody who's lived in New York City can tell you that trying to live on $15 an hour in New York City is practically impossible unless your apartment is a cardboard box. And even then, the rents on those are pretty high.
So 15 times 40 times 52
About 30,000 a year.
$31,200 a year. Yeah, that is low.
Living in New York City on $30 an hour, which is about $60,000 a year, even that can be pretty tough.
Well, look, I lived in New York City a little more than 15 years ago. Obviously, cost of living was a little bit lower, on roughly half of that, and I worked 2 jobs and a lot of overtime.
Right. And how easy was it for you?
It was not easy, but I managed to do it. I don't think I could have done it forever, which is why I went to try to get a better job. And
yeah, but the whole idea
it wasn't a long-term plan.
No, but the idea that like,
right, and also minimum wage. Here's the thing that people don't understand about minimum wage. Minimum wage is not like a lifetime role. It's like McDonald's, working the fry station. The goal is to become manager or get a better job.
No.
I don't think, and we disagree on this, but I don't think minimum wage needs to be a job where you can afford your own apartment and a car and save money for college. I don't think it's a support yourself. It's minimum wage. It's the entry to the workforce. It isn't something that somebody should be doing for a 40-year career at minimum wage.
And I just completely disagree with that. If somebody is working full-time hours, we'll set that at 40 hours a week. If somebody is working full-time hours, they should be making enough money that they can have a decent lifestyle. And I am not saying luxury, but being able to, and I'll even put this in New York City context, be able to afford a place with a roommate, be able to afford decent food for the month, be able to afford a cell phone, and the occasional nicety, be it a subscription service or a night out or something like that. Like you should not be consigning minimum wage workers to like subsistence and poverty conditions. Like if somebody,
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying they have to live in poverty. What I'm saying is that I did it, and I did not live in poverty. I did it, and I did not live in poverty, and it was a temporary thing. What
Right,
I'm
but for
saying is
some,
that it shouldn't be,
not everybody has the capacity or ability to do much more than minimum wage work.
which is why the city offers social services.
Yeah,
So
and
if
so
you are getting by a minimum wage and you're at or below the poverty line, you are able to get subsidies. You're able to get assistance with food. You're able to get housing vouchers. The city offers lots of these things. So the fact that we're just trying to solve all of it, and we're going when we
okay,
talk
but
about affordable housing,
who pays
we're
for the housing vouchers? Who pays for the social services? Who
the
pays for it?
taxpayers, the
Okay,
taxpayers.
so now we're just talking about where do we want to put the costs, and
Yes, but putting it on at $30 minimum wage means you're going to lose small businesses. That's the issue. You're going to have lots of people lose their jobs because a business can't afford to have 5
okay,
or 6 employees. They have to have 2, and ultimately they're going to close.
okay,
So
so
what I'm
let's ask this
saying is
question
that
then.
$30 is too aggressive, and my other thing is that minimum wage isn't something that somebody works for 40 years at only minimum wage. Okay, I'm not saying they have to live in poverty, but I am saying that you're in a city where there's lots of social services. So when you include food stamps and housing vouchers,
Right,
and
so
there are
right
other
now food stamps are
programs,
suspended, so
well, okay, well, which I think is again is absolutely wild. And there's also lots of programs popping up to get food to people.
sure.
I think this is utterly dystopian. Don't get me wrong. I think it's fucking wild. Okay, you can blame Trump on that. Again, I'm not choosing one side of the line or the other politically. What I'm saying is what Trump is doing is insane, and I think $30 an hour is too aggressive.
So
That's my
and
take.
I
I'll let you finish the last word, but we got to
but
move on to the next one.
I mean, when it comes to $30 an hour, it may well be too aggressive. I don't know, and I
I
would like
think,
to see how it plays out.
and what you'd
And
like to say is, I'd like to see how it plays out, and we'll see how many businesses go out of business,
but
and then we'll reevaluate. Well,
the
one,
last thing I want to say
it's too
is
late. I know I said I was giving
well,
you the last word, but it's too late when they go out of business, and we're
well,
not going to reduce it after that. Once it goes up, it's not coming back down.
the other question I have is like when you say, well, people that are on minimum wage right now at 15 an hour, if they're having trouble making it by, they can apply for these city assistance programs. That's paid for somebody, and so like if you don't want to raise the minimum wage, then like where does the tax revenue come to help support the people who need the help? And
I,
I guess we'll come back to that as well. Let's go on to the next item, which is he wants to build 200,000 affordable housing units over 10 years.
yeah, so I was thinking about this on my ride home, and I was thinking about NYCHA housing, which is pretty lousy apartments in bad shape, buildings that are just like festering with mold. A lot of the times they have elevators that don't work. They're high rise buildings, so if you live on the 8th floor and you're 72 years old, you got to walk up all those flights of stairs. A lot of violence, a lot of drugs, just generally bad areas. Not always, but generally bad areas. Not well run, and that's city run housing. So I think building 200,000 affordable housing units, uh, basically you're looking for new construction, and you're and
Wouldn't
you're
have to be.
and you're privatizing the construction. What I'd like to see is a revamp of NYCHA housing. New York City NYCHA is New York City Housing Authority for people who don't know.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if he has some plans for that.
But yeah, I mean, the affordable. I'm all for more affordable housing. I think the placement of it, I think there's a lot of things that we could do on this that everybody on all sides of the political
Yo,
spectrum
here's
can
an
agree on.
idea for you. So remember you're talking about those buildings that are being foreclosed on that the banks don't want?
Hmm.
Why not make some of those buildings candidates for the city to invest in and build these affordable housing units? And here's the other thing: like this is putting
Well,
no, just putting words in Mamdani's mouth. So I'm not saying that he has said this, but like if we're to say that like landlords can get rich by just charging rent and owning these properties, well, you know what? Okay. Now the city gets to be the landlord and the city gets to set rent and the city gets to see how difficult it is and see what the prices that they charge for rent on these affordable housing units that they're building is. But like you can't say being a landlord and owning property is an easy way to make money and then like say, well, we can't afford to have the city own property and rent it out
well,
to
I
people.
don't.
Like
Yeah,
it has to be one or the other there. And so if the city like all of these buildings that you're saying are going to make for poor investment vehicles for a profit seeking landlord, okay, let the city buy them out and let the city renovate those apartments and the
renovate
city can rent it out and
and
renovate them.
manage, or
Yeah.
the city could give financial incentive to the current landlords to make more affordable housing, which they do for new developments. They don't do it for existing buildings right now. So,
Okay. Well,
uh,
I think there's ways that
all right,
you can have public-private
let's
partnerships on these things to
let's
help address the
let's
problem.
let's talk about this rotten lettuce idea here. City-run grocery store. So his proposal is that each borough will have one city-run grocery store. And the grocery store won't have to pay tax because it's a city-run location.
Right. So the
Uh,
revenue
the,
that the thing
the
generates is the
money,
tax,
yeah,
basically.
basically they're saving on expenses so they can have cheaper groceries. So as soon as I heard, I didn't realize it was. I was like, oh, that sounds like an interesting idea. It's going to put out of business a lot of bodegas and grocery stores. But then I heard that it's one location in each borough, which to me, if you have super cheap groceries at one location in a city that has roughly 9 million people, uh, that's going to be a clusterfuck of a single grocery store. So I think it could. I just think the one location per borough is a really bad idea.
Well,
I
it'll be
think
a
maybe
trial.
I think maybe the city subsidizing lower groceries by reducing maybe say taxes on healthy foods or something like that might not be a bad idea. I think there's other ways to achieve cheaper groceries in New York City, but I think pushing out bodegas and small and independent grocery stores is a bad idea.
I don't think it's going to have a major impact because the whole reason why bodegas and small supermarkets are popular is because they are close and they're convenient. And so,
Well,
like, if I have if I'm hungry and I need to buy food and there's a city run grocery store that's 30 minutes away because there's only one in each borough, or there's a bodega 2 minutes walk, then I'm probably going to still buy stuff from the bodega because I can get it in 2 minutes. And I'm going to do my big trips to get a whole bunch of stuff from the city run store. But it's really hard for me to square these two comments from you, which is these things are going to be a shit show because there's going to be so many people that want to go there. And also that, like, it's a, and also,
okay,
like,
well,
they're
look,
not going to make money. Like, if you're,
I'll give you another example of a shit show. Okay, that nobody likes doing, but we all do it because we have to. The DMV. Okay, it's going to be a shitty location like the DMV, and I
it
think
doesn't
there's
have to be.
I don't think it does either. But what I'm telling you is I know how this shit works in New York City. It's going to go poorly. I think there could be some fine tuning done to this affordable grocery plan, an affordable grocery plan that is not putting one location in each borough. The boroughs are huge, by the way.
Right.
I know they don't look that big on the map, but
Oh,
they are enormous. Generally speaking, when you go to a grocery store in New York City, you don't shop around with a shopping cart. Um, you you just kind of walk around with what you can hold in your hands, and when your hands get full, you go check out. Now, obviously, in some of the outer boroughs where people have cars and things like that, yeah, they can. There are Costco's and BJ's and stuff like that in the city where people really stock up. But kind of the day to day everyman, is not driving a car, does not own a car, and is not Ubering from the grocery store home with their. Think about how many trips you got to take to and from the car when you get maybe not you because you're a single guy, but like when you
yeah,
buy it
it's
for a
one.
family, you're like going a lot. A lot of New Yorkers stop by the bodegas and grocery stores once a day to pick up fresh food on their way home.
Sure. So I think that, like, having city-run grocery stores where people can get lower price groceries, and like, if the city prices things right, they can break even or maybe even turn a small profit for the city. I think it's an interesting idea. I don't really see much downside to it,
Yeah,
so I'm all for it.
I think it needs some tweaks. I think the idea as it is bad. One kind of note because it's in our notes here
Why
is
is it bad?
repurposing. Oh, I just gave my reasons. Repurposing vacant retail space in the subway. So across New York City, there's like 240, roughly 240 like storefronts within the subways. Right now, 80 of them, a third of them, are vacant, which is wild. So they're thinking about not turning this into grocery stores. I don't know why it's in the notes here, but what he said was making this like drug rehab facilities or something like that in the subways or like safe
Uh,
spaces. Did you hear this?
no, I don't know anything about this.
No. Well, I heard this, uh, and I think it's a terrible idea because I think attracting more mentally ill and drug users to the subways is a bad idea.
I'm suspicious of the idea, but I would need to see details.
Yeah.
All right, next one.
Uh,
We got 8 minutes left. We need to hit this. All right,
okay.
next one: universal child care and baby supplies.
Yeah, I think that's not a bad idea. Providing you have the revenue to cover the cost of this, but it will allow more people to work, providing there are the jobs available.
And for all the people complaining about our low birth rates and stuff, here's somebody trying to make child rearing and child care more easy and affordable in a city where very few people have children because it is such a nightmare to do so.
I think the arguments against free childcare and like free pre-K and all that stuff, I think those are just lousy arguments.
Same.
Higher
Especially that
tax,
as someone who doesn't have or want kids.
higher taxes on wealthy people and corporations. So raising the corporate tax rate to 11.5 and adding 2% tax on incomes over $1 million. I think here's how I kind of argue. I don't think it's a terrible idea, but listen, if you're a city and businesses want to come to your city, but there's another city they could go to that's offering them better incentives, the business will not come to your city. So you have to play the game. You've got to play the game.
Yeah, but
I don't know what those numbers are. I don't know what percentage point those numbers are. All I'm saying is that there's a game to be played, and you want to attract businesses to your city. The more businesses, the more tax dollars. So you've got to. It's like I could bench press 50 pounds 300 times, or I could bench press 225 pounds 10 times, or I could bench press 330 pounds one time. What am I going for is like the maximum amount of weight that I can get up and down. So for one set, the maximum amount of weight that has been moved. So what you got to look at is the maximum number of tax dollars that you're bringing in based off the number of businesses and the tax rate. So I'm not for this or against it. What I'm saying is it's a complex problem, and it needs to be dealt with at a microscopic level. And you need to have like boards that actually review this stuff and committees that review this. I just think somebody who's 33 years old who's not considering it like that, just saying 11.5 and 2% is not responsible. And I'm not saying it's definitely not responsible, but I think after the research is done and the committees have reviewed, then you come up with that number.
Yeah, I would say that New York City has advantages over a lot of other competitive cities because of there is so much business and high dollars that are entrenched in the city that the city will naturally attract businesses over competitive other cities that might be competing with lower taxes and lower regulation, but you're also much less likely to succeed to the same level that you could if you were based in New York City. So New York City is still going to draw in high finance, high dollar, very prestigious companies. And I look at it as like a 2% tax on millionaires in New York City. That's $20,000 a year more that they would be spending in tax. And these millionaires are benefiting from the fact that they are living in New York City and getting all the benefits of the institutional wealth that resides there.
No, I think, yeah.
And it will help make everybody else's lives in New York City better. And by lifting up the lowest people in New York City, that's going to make the quality of life for everybody, including those millionaires, better. Next.
Well, I would also argue that a lot of tax dollars are misspent. So
Well,
it just allows for more corruption to happen. I don't agree with all of the points that you made.
I want to skip to we're missing a few issues here. I want to talk about really quick why I think his election victory matters. And we talked about this before the cast, which is, and you've said this a number of times on various topics about government in general, is that your feeling, which is felt by a lot of people, is that government is wasteful and inefficient and doesn't do as good of a job as like private institutions can. And I think what Mamdani is trying to do is say, hey, when government is run properly, when government is run for the right reasons by competent people that are largely free of corruption, government can do a good job and government can help. Government can help most regular people. And the reason why government hasn't in the past is because you've either had inept or corrupt people running it, and you didn't have enough oversight over waste and inefficiency. And so if we can solve those problems, then we can show you the government can do good. And for that reason, I want to see him succeed. And for the Democrats in the rest of the country, you can learn some lessons from Mamdani's campaign.
Let me hit the bar trivia. All right.
Okay.
And if you want, check my comment there. We can wrap up on a couple of items if you want. But let me hit the bar trivia for episode 282. Based on the laws of the U.S. Constitution, there are 5 requirements a person must meet in order to become president of the United States. The candidate must be at least 35 years old, must be a citizen of the United States, must have resided in the United States for at least 14 years, and must have been born in the United States. I think this is a good one because, Mamdani doesn't fit all these criteria. Okay, so 35, citizen of the U.S., resided in the U.S. for 14 years, been born in the United States. There's one more requirement. What is it? 5 requirements total. 35, U.S. citizen, resided here for 14 years, and been born in the U.S. There's a fifth requirement. What is it to be the president of the United States per the U.S. Constitution? Go to SipTalkPodcast.com. Click the bar trivia tab and answer the bar trivia question. James, you want to? We're gonna lose our Instagram stream here. You want to tackle a couple of other items here?
I mean, I want to say where I was going before this is like, so Mamdani is trying to say, hey, let's rethink the way government works and say, hey, it can help people. And the national look for Democrats, like the things that you can take away from this election, you can look at like the California Prop 50 vote, where the state voted like 64-36 in favor of redistricting to fight off the Texas redistricting plans, is that voters are rewarding the Democrats that are standing up against all these unpopular policies you're seeing coming from Trump. And voters are rewarding politicians who act like real people and talk to voters like real people and are willing to put out policies that will help people and explain in very easy to understand language how it will help and why it's a good thing.
So I have not watched Mamdani talking like a real person.
I have.
Yeah, I don't really connect with this guy the way that you seem to. So that's a little bit lost on me. I agree with you, like being like the thing is, like, to me, again, this isn't somebody that would like be one of my friends. I know he's a little younger than I am, but like I have friends of all different ages. This is not a guy I would want to hang out with. And I really didn't have many thoughts on him. I really tried to stay, now that I'm not a New York City resident, I really tried to stay out of this election. I'm curious how things are going to turn out. There's a lot of backlash about this guy that make it sound like utterly catastrophic for the city and for civilization and for religion. I don't see any of that, but also
I think a lot of that is driven by either racism or Islamophobia.
I think it's just a little political derangement right now, which we're
Maybe
seeing.
some of that too.
We're seeing all over the place, and it's the opposite of it's the liberal people that think we're going to end up in World War III under Trump, which I don't think is that far fetched actually. So maybe, again, this is why I definitely lean liberal. But it's the same thing, being like, well, now the army is going to be rolling in their tanks. The day after Mamdani gets elected into New York City. It didn't happen. Didn't happen today. So
I don't think that's going to happen.
But that's my point. Is that that's what the right wing people are saying, is that, oh, Trump's now going to take back over New York City because Mamdani is such a socialist liberal.
Here's another thing, and I didn't really touch on this very much before, but it's kind of been a theme to a lot of my responses to your doubts. Is like you and I have varying levels of agreement about how good some of these ideas are, right?
I do want to talk about just the safety and the environment a little bit real quick before we hop off. But go ahead.
Like we can. This is not going to be out of order. Even if you and I disagree about how good of an idea these policies are, I would say I think that even the policies that I personally have doubts about, I want to see him try them. I want to see what happens, because I would rather see somebody have an idea that they think is going to help people and then test it out and see if it works. And if it does work, great. And if it doesn't work, then learn from it and say, okay, that didn't work, but we had the right goals in mind. And now we know why it didn't work, and we can do a better version of it next time. Instead of saying, hey, we've got a system that we know doesn't work, and we're just going to keep doing the same thing.
Well, so I don't agree with you there, because I don't want to throw it at the wall and see if it sticks and see if it's any good as a New York City business owner. Because if they don't do a good job this time, that could actually be very, very bad for me. And that happened. I watched what happened and this is why I'm considerably less liberal post 2020 than I was going into 2020, is because of the liberal decisions that were made that affected my business back then, that put me in massive amounts of debt and made my life very, very miserable, very high stress, and it was not good. So let's just talk about safety, community safety, real quick.
Can I say one thing about, because I know how you were affected in 2020.
Yeah, and I don't want, like going up to $30 minimum wage,
Well,
is not something that I can handle right now. If I
but,
got to, I'm trying to hire
but
employees as it is.
what I would say is in the way that you were personally affected in 2020, and many businesses were, is I think there was actually a failure of government in terms of they made a bunch of decisions.
By the way, run by Cuomo, run by
Right,
Cuomo.
right,
Okay, so and he was the alternative in this election. So
right.
just
But
I think that's a really good thing to be said right now because we're arguing against Mondami. The alternative was Cuomo, who I just said was one of the reasons that things were really shitty in 2020.
right. So like, and again, this is me criticizing what like I know I didn't live in New York City in 2020, but I know plenty of people who did, including you, and I know how it affected you, and I know that they made a bunch of decisions that in some ways made a lot of sense at the time in terms of shutting things down.
I
And
didn't think they made any sense at the time, but go ahead.
but there was very little care that was paid to the impacts that it was going to have to the people that they were most directly affecting in terms of forcing businesses to shut down. But those businesses still had to shoulder a lot of their fixed costs, whether or not they were able to operate and generate any revenue. And so, if a government is going to step in and mandate that a business cannot operate, then the government needs to provide more of a backstop to the businesses that it is affecting,
Hmm.
because it's not fair that the government says you guys can't make any money, but we're still going to hold the force of law to make sure that you pay your debts to other people. That's an unfair proposition, and I will say that like we can debate about whether the measures the government took in 2020 were appropriate or not. I think that's immaterial to the argument that if the government's going to make these decisions and negatively affect people, they need to do more to support those people, because if the goal of public health or whatever is so important that you're going to shut down people from making money, you need to compensate those people better than you did.
Yeah, all right. So let's talk about safety. One of his big things is having mental health responders and community boards full of mental health responders respond instead of police for nonviolent incidents. And he thinks that's going to have some control over homelessness, drug abuse, and mental health issues. Uh, I don't think so because I still don't think that those community boards are going to get those people the treatment and the help that they need.
Well, let's start with this one, which is I think today police are asked to respond to a bunch of situations that they're not really trained for, and honestly they shouldn't be trained for, because it's not really a police job. Is like police shouldn't be the primary resource when dealing with someone who's having a mental health breakdown.
No, it needs to be, but also if that person having the mental health breakdown is brandishing a weapon or a crowbar, or because I see this shit
Oh,
happen
I'm not saying police
all the
should never
time,
be involved.
all the time in the streets. But what you're saying is that the police show up with guns, and when the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So the police show up with their one
And
tool,
that's
which is a
it's
stun gun to gun,
oversimplifying, but
which
to some
it's
degree,
what?
yes. That you're oversimplifying my case.
I am, but
To some degree, I
the
agree.
the reason this is an issue is because police showing up to mental health incidences uh, creates basically you're overusing the police for incidents that they don't really need to be involved in because it's not really a police issue, and then people get shot generally
Yeah,
by the police. So that's why it's a bad idea, and it's really a mental health or a substance abuse thing. And the substance abuse thing, because it is criminalized, could be a police issue. But really, like the police would rather it just get solved and that person get treatment than have to haul that person away to jail or write them a citation. The police would rather be handled by somebody else. I agree with this, but what and it's funny because I took a mental note of this last night when I walked through Penn Station. They have I forget what it's called, but it's basically a group of very well funded social workers that drive around in white and orange minivans and wear orange vests and walk around with bologna sandwiches and offer to the homeless people. And there was probably 5 or 6 homeless people just sat outside of Penn Station because it was raining, doing drugs, laying like one of them. If you saw this person, you would say, "Is that person dead?" Because they had just like taken whatever drug, were laying there in the street. Other people doing drugs around. People like without all their clothes on. It was raining outside, and then these like 6 guys with these orange vests on offering people bologna sandwiches. And it's like what you're doing right now is not solving the problem, and like you're not moving the needle here at all.
well, I
Uh,
would say
and that's what tax dollars are going towards right
well,
now. It's not solving the problem.
so you might be correct, but
I'm not incorrect. I'm telling you what I saw on the street. I'm
not saying. I'm talking about the conclusions you're drawing. It's notably you saying this isn't helping, and I'm saying you might be correct, but
I've been saying that for years, and the problem's getting worse. So
okay, but will you just let me
Go
run
ahead.
this through a little bit?
Go ahead.
Is if you have these people that are designed to do this kind of outreach to people that are doing drugs on the streets, right? It could start by giving them a bologna sandwich. And that's the way that you can start a conversation with this person to help them get help. And maybe it takes 2 or 3 bologna sandwiches and 2 or 3 conversations, or 5 or 6. But eventually you're able to build a relationship with this person, understand what their problems are, and be able to convince them to actually step into a treatment facility and get the help they need. It's not as simple as just hauling these people off the streets and forcing them into treatment or arresting them, which I know you're not suggesting. I'm not putting words in your mouth.
But sometimes it seems like that's the only way, and that's why you end up with a Trump. So
right,
but that's how you end up with a Trump. Is that it seems
maybe
like
the
that's the only
approach
way.
that they're taking right now is insufficient, but having outreach and just talking to people and building relationships and getting them to trust systems that have previously failed them.
But somebody got all fucked up by a mentally ill person yesterday at the subway stop in my office, which it was I think it was a young lady. She got just really fucked up, and it's an issue that needs to be dealt with faster. And what I'm telling you is I don't disagree with you that like it's a foot in the door to the problem, but it's not good enough. So what I'm saying, we're talking about Mamdani right now,
and he's saying he wants to do more.
And I think that's a noble effort, and we don't have much information about it here.
And also, like, when it comes to having mental health people as outreach to these incidents instead of police, again, it doesn't have to be either or. It's you could have these mental health people that go along with the police, so that way, if the mental health person is more capable of handling it, then they take the lead. And if it's a situation where you've got a person with a weapon that's truly a danger and the mental health person is outmatched, then you have the police. You can have both working hand in hand. The problem is police have been asked to do a job that it's unfair to ask them to do. And
we're on the same page. We're on the same page. Let's one last thing I think is environmental upgrades. So
I know very little about this.
Well, basically, a lot of these buildings are just really old. And if you go to Europe, you're in like a 400-year-old building, and there's like electricity in every room. It like everything works, everything's clean and works really well. You go to New York City, and there's an 80-year-old building. It like the boiler room of the building looks like the boiler room of the Titanic. Like nothing has changed. It's very inefficient. So he wants to incentivize landlords to comply with local law 97, which I think basically just has to do with like greenhouse gas and emissions or something like that. Pushing for green roofs and solar, which if you know anything about how solar works, putting some solar panels on the top of a 40-unit building or a 40-floor building or even an 8-floor building, it's not doing very much for them. But again, I'm all for
small steps add up to something, and even if they don't solve the problem entirely, if you can make a dent in an issue, that's better than doing nothing.
What I'm telling you is it's not a big enough dent that it's just not. It's silly. I'd rather see more grass on roofs. Really, I guess I don't know. But again, I'm all for environmental upgrades as long as it's government incentivized. And then one last thing he has is transit-oriented development. So basically, increasing. I think he wants to increase new construction closer to the subways. And I've seen a lot of new construction, especially in like Brooklyn, that is very far away from subways, making it very difficult to commute around the city. So
yeah, there's economic ways to deal with that.
We have one family member where they live in Brooklyn, and I took this, and they have 2 vehicles because there's 2 working people there. And there's probably some buses that I didn't know about at the time, but I got off the subway and then I walked to their house, and it was like a 45-minute walk. So I did not realize what I was getting into. But point is, there's a lot of new construction around them, and that's not super convenient. So you're making new construction; it needs to be near transit hubs.
And you can play with the economic incentives to get people to build more near transit hubs. That seems like pretty common sense stuff that shouldn't be too difficult to work out if you just put your nose into an Excel spreadsheet.
So look, let me in my closing here just mention that like I was not pro Mamdani. I'm definitely still not pro Mamdani, but I'm a great example of an open-minded person having a conversation about this guy who's not extremist saying that the city's going to burn in hell.
I would say
inauguration day, like which is what you're hearing basically.
But I would say based on the discussion that we just had over like the major platform
Hold on. Also, I even said I don't like him like personally. Like what I've seen, I'm like I don't think I'd like to eat dinner with that guy.
Right,
But which means nothing. It means nothing.
No, it doesn't. Like, but I would say based on the discussion that we just had over like the major pieces of his platform, I think overall you are more supportive than unsupportive of his policies.
Exactly. And
like I'm not saying you support every single one of the things he's doing, but I think
not that I can vote in New York City because I'm not a New York City resident, although I do own a business in New York City. I wouldn't have voted for him. I probably would have voted for Cuomo reluctantly, only because he would have had the better interests for the business. But I didn't like Cuomo either. And I thought, to me, his downfall was when the celebrity of being on TV and having a zillion viewers every day went to his head. And that to me just seemed like total Icarus.
Ricky from New York says he doesn't understand the over-the-top fear-mongering. And
that's what politics have become. And I'm telling you, I wouldn't have voted for this guy. I don't really like all his policies. I don't like the fact that he's claiming to be
like all his policies. But I think
we broke down a lot of his policies and said, like, there's again, we're not hearing the policies from him. We're just we've looked them up and we're reading them, so we don't know exactly where he falls on these policies. But like a lot of them, I'm not against. And just to reiterate, like I said, this is a guy like I don't like his personality, but I'm not. I think this is a great example of a very civil conversation about politics that nobody's having conversations in this style.
I will say, Zohran Mamdani, if you want to join the podcast next week, you're invited.
Yeah, we'll do it from the office in Midtown. You won't have to go too far. Anything I'm missing? Anything you want to close with?
I think that it's an experiment that I'm going to watch with interest because I think if he succeeds, it'll be a way for a lot of other candidates in this country to hopefully replicate in a positive way. I don't want to see him fail, but if he does fail, then I hope that there are lessons that we can take as to how to do government better.
Well, I don't think he's bringing the government better.
We'll see.
Well, I think the current trajectory for our national, state, and city politics is the wrong direction. So
I do too, but we probably disagree as to why.
Yeah. On that note, I want to thank Raj Kalev for feeding us your comments on YouTube, Twitch, X, Facebook, and Instagram. TikTok, we don't get to see your comments live, but we do our best to be live. Visit SipTalkPodcast.com. Check out the Bar Trivia, answer the Bar Trivia for a chance to win some cool Sip Talk merch. And on that note, see ya.
Well,
adios.
Ricky says, I don't understand why there weren't better candidates competing.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of people would say Zohran Mamdani was a good candidate, and time will tell if they were right.
New York City real estate agents, it's time to make the move. Keep 100% of your commission. Get access to hands-on agent support and New York City's best agent training, the Slingshot program. Online access to our Agent University and online on-demand video training program. All at DiGiulio. Contact info@DiGiulioGroup.com to make the move.